So this is a meeting of the Southborough Planning Board. The first item on the agenda is MBTA communities, and I wanted to ask the board, since there's so many people in attendance for our 7 p.m. hearing, if you wanted to discuss MBTA till 7 and then suspend it and take up the resume the conversation at MBTA after the hearing. Is everyone in agreement with that? Is that okay, Jesse?
Yep.
Okay. Should I start off on MBTA or?
I could give a really quick update on general big picture things. So since we last met on April 1st, we've had a few things come across our plate regarding the MBTA communities. We've had contact from the Dell former EMC property, from the company there inquiring about other areas. We've had an inquiry from other residents in the half-mile radius within the train station, expressing interest in some future plans that they have. If you recall, the planning board was working on a letter with the select board in order to submit to the EOHLC, formerly known as the DHCD, to request possible waiver and some relaxation of the requirements because of some concerns that we had with the compliance model when we ran it right before the town meeting in March with our consultant. So that letter has been reviewed by town council, and the select board reviewed that at their meeting, was it last week? And we have a relatively final draft letter, I believe. Then let's see here. What else do we have? The planning department posed some questions along with the planning board chair to Chris Kletchman, who is one of the representatives of the EOHLC. And she made time to meet with us and go over some questions regarding mixed use possibilities within the MBTA community overlay districts, specifically within the half-mile radius of the station. And then we've also had some assistance. The chair was able to get some tutoring, or I should say some information about the compliance model from one of the residents, Andrew Pfaff, who had been looking at the model in great detail and has been kind of assisting us from behind the scenes a little bit. And that brings us up to speed for tonight.
Okay, so as town planner mentioned, town council or Attorney Lydon, actually, who is handling the MBTA communities for other communities, town council recommended that we send the letter to her. She reviewed it, came back with some minor edits. I sent it to the select board and requested it be on their 423 agenda, which it was. And they were generally in favor, although Sam Stivers had some edits, which are in the Dropbox. And I thought he was going to be here tonight. So the select board appointed him as the point person on this. And if he agreed with the letter, then the select board chair was going to sign it. So I guess, is there any comment on Mr. Stivers' edits to the letter, Mr. Stein?
Can you come back to me?
Sure, Ms. Houlihan.
Thanks.
Reviewing Sam's edits, and I don't know if you want to put up the red line. Are we sharing it?
Sure.
I didn't have any major objection to his edits, so I'm fine with those. I think it's really important that we get the letter to the state to try and get this extension so we don't have to approve this by the end of the year.
Mr. Maria.
I like Sam's edits. I think he just you know, they were pretty minor to me. He changed a couple choice words. I think he used the word egregious, which I very much like, and I'm happy with his comments and his edits.
Ms. Braccio?
Excuse me, I'm fine with the edits as well. I also believe, as Marnie said, that we need to get this done and we need to get this sent in. Otherwise, there's no point in sending it because we're going to miss any window that there may have been. Thank you.
So up on the screen is a copy of the letter with Sam Stiver's select board members' edits in red.
Mr. Stein?
Karina, can you just scroll that down, please? Okay. Yeah, keep going.
Would it just help for those who are in our audience, just to recap what the premise of the letter is?
Sure.
So, do you want to do that? Do you want me to do that?
Feel free.
Sure. So I think it's important. So the MBTA Communities Act is an act or a law that was put in by our governor and our legislation. So it is a requirement to build 15 units per acre by right in up to 50 acre zoning. 10% of that has to be in the zoning by the train station. So that's 10 acres. And then the remaining land, there has to be at least 25 acres that are combined, and then 3 additional 5-acre segments. We wrote a grant, we got the grant, we were provided a state agency that provided us compliance models. And so we ran multiple planning board initiated workshops for the town community. We had a lot of residents from the area near the train station attend, and a lot of other residents, and we came up with some suggestions. Those suggestions were run through the compliance model and they were deemed appropriate. We wrote our bylaw to introduce into our town meeting. And then we learned through Andrew Pfaff, who is also a volunteer and on our advisory board and a very Excel savvy individual, ran the compliance model and felt it was inaccurate. And so we learned that the model and our people that we hired had erroneously provided us information. So we relied upon that information to write the draft bylaw. And so we had to withdraw that from the town meeting. And now we are still required by the state to have an approved law on the books for 50 acres of by right zoning for 15 units per acre by the end of the year. This letter basically recounts the issues that we've dealt with, our attempts to comply with the law, and the challenges that we have faced. So it's asking us for some sort of either allowance for us to have some flexibility in the acreage around the train station. As you know, we only really have a semicircle for 10 acres by the train station, and it's complex because it's a historic district. So it really, and it's really one of our most affordable areas in town. So then you're kind of compiling a lot of challenges in that area. So this letter essentially by the planning board, the select board has also weighed in. It's a combined letter asking for some extra time and or some allowance around the 50 acreage and where we put that. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Marnie. I would just add that we're required to zone for 15 units per acre, not build.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with the rest of the board on this. Let's proceed with this. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that we're set with this letter then we can, I wonder if Sam will show up later to give his sign off on this. I don't see him yet. So I assume he's okay if we just accept his edits, but I'll have to run that by him and then send it to the chair of the select board for his signature, and then we can send it on to the state. As Karina alluded to, we had a call with Chris Kletchman, who's the Director of Community service division for the HLC, which is spearheading this statute. And we kind of previewed some of the things in the letter with her. And she seemed on the extension of the compliance date. She said that that's under the Attorney General and out of her hands, but her feeling is that if we're trying to comply, they won't come down on us, hopefully. And as far as relaxing the requirements, she seemed amenable to being somewhat flexible, that we can try different things. So it was a
Right,
Good
in fact,
call.
She was going to take a couple of tasks back to her office to see various flexibilities within the half a mile to see what would, yeah, she'd get back to us on a couple of things.
So that's the letter. The next, so we were going to try and work on two tracks, try and get some relief from the state and try to gain, see if we could gain compliance. And so I worked with Andrew Pfaff, who seems to know this better than our hired consultant. And he walked me through. So he took the entire Mass GIS and downloaded that and then separated out Southborough. So he could like click on a parcel and it would load into the compliance model. My little laptop would blow up if I tried to do that. So I don't have all the shape files, but I was able to understand and walk through and when you change things and see how it affected things. So it was very, very helpful. And we also talked about if the half mile was measured from the very eastern edge of the transit station, which Chris Clutchman said should look at. We could include some industrial parcels, and that would gain us our minimum unit capacity. So that's what there were a couple other districts there that Mr. Pfaff had his ideas on, but I think we should concentrate on the transit area and then, change other things if need be, but that seems to be where we need to gain compliance. So I don't know if you want to put up the map.
Andrew Dennington, are you intending to have a quorum this evening? No, right? Okay, just checking.
Oh, maybe that's why Sam isn't here. So those three parcels in blue on the eastern end of Southville Road there, those are the ones, if we measured the half mile from the very eastern portion of the transit station, it would include the parcel in the middle there would be included. And then the next parcel next door is under the same ownership. So we were thinking that the doctrine merger would apply so that we could include those two parcels together. So that will take a little flexibility from the state, but if we do that, then we ran it a couple of different ways, and I sent out that summary sheet. And if we Oh, thank you. Oh, I missed. Oh, I have that. Just, it's okay. So the different scenarios were if our zoning requires for residential dwellings in an industrial and business village that it must comply with Res B. So that's what the first column is. It's Res B, and we would get 133 units out of the industrial and 9 out of the business village. And then if we run it just with the standards of the zone, the industrial and the business village, we would get 153 and 23. And then if we wanted to do a mandatory mixed use and use that unit capacity to offset the capacity at the station area, that's the third column. And actually, under the second column with the Res B standards, there are 2 parcels that show 0 unit capacity because they don't meet the 25,000 square feet. But those 2 parcels are under the same ownership, so the doctrine of merger would take effect there. And Chris Clutchman is looking into how to account for that. So, any comments, Mr. Stein?
Just real quickly, though, what's on the screen is what, Planning Board Chair Luchel just explained. So. Briefly.
No comments, thanks.
Ms. Houlihan?
So Mimi, I know that you've spent quite a bit of time with Andrew. As you look at this area 1, do you have a recommendation to the planning board as kind of what your thoughts are?
Yes. So I think that Mr. Pfaff was very much in favor of mixed use because he doesn't want to have all our industrial and commercially zoned properties going only to residential. So if we could maybe send a request for approval of mixed use to the state and at the same time send it as the standard Res B for approval to the state and see if we can get approval for both. Maybe we can do the mandatory mixed use there. So if the mixed use is within the station area, it can offset those units, but that there's a little flexibility because it's kind of out on the edge.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is nice. And it's lower the threshold, right? So would we need to be in 175 or something for capacity for us to meet the requirements of the 10 acres?
150,
Oh,
what we
150.
have to
So
hit.
so it'd be still lower than the threshold. We'd still need to ask for, it'd be 133. Or do you add those 2? The 133 and the 9? You're still at 142.
So it would be 133 and 23.
Oh, and 23. Okay. So we would just make that threshold.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So that would be if, so we could either ask for mixed use for just the industrial or for both the business village and the industrial, or, one or the other, or both, or none.
Yeah, I would be in favor of the mixed use development. And I would follow the recommendation of the chair.
Mr. Maria?
I have just a question looking at the different, this compliance summary. It looks like the Fitzgerald property and the parking lot is included in the modeling. Is that correct? I've had a few residents ask me about that.
No. Just the parking lot.
Okay. I guess on behalf of people that have spoken to me, I want to ask if we can consider the Fitzgerald's lot. I mean, a lot of people feel that with the renovations, it's hardly historic anymore. This was the comments that were given to me. And it's possibly a great place for mixed-use development. So I know that we had a rubric and we were talking about trying to take out some of the historic properties. It really kind of falls apart down there in that very historic village, right? But I want to see what, if that, what effect that would have, and if the board would support that.
We can certainly look at it, but it's a 1900 building, and I think they just sided it. They didn't do anything. It still looks just like the
Yeah, I actually went on,
factory store.
yeah, I went online to look at pictures and I saw inside pictures, but obviously not upstairs. But I think probably I'd just be interested to look at it with and without, if that's okay.
Sure,
Can I
sure.
comment on that? I don't think it's a bad idea, Deb, but my only concern is on the south side of town, that's the only place that's close that people can go and get milk or eggs or whatever. And if we include that and that gets sold, then I think it creates a hardship. Again, I'd be curious what the neighbors think about it, but I know I've gone there when I needed something quick. It was easy instead of having to go down Route 9 or go wherever. So I would just ask that we consider that as well.
Yeah, and I would just say, I'm not trying to run anybody out of business. The idea behind mixed use is that there possibly would be other places to go. Maybe they would stay there for the next 100 years. This is only zoning.
So anything else on that? So the next step, should we look at, sure. Is the board finished? Jesse, do you have anything you wanted to say?
No, thank you.
Okay,
I'm just gonna keep this really quick because it's not well thought out, but I just need to react to your last comment. As someone that lives on the south side, my jaw just dropped that you would even suggest something like that.
Could you just identify
I'm
yourself
sorry.
and your
sorry,
address?
guys. Kristen Laval, 12 Southwood Drive.
Say it one more
Just-
time. I'm sorry.
Kristen Laval.
Okay, sorry. Oh, yes.
Just last week,
Mhm.
I just watched the replay of the select board meeting last week, which I beg you all to do. Great education on the other issue we're gonna be discussing tonight. But the owner who went in front of the board just last week to transfer the liquor license, and we were commending him for the effort he's put in over the last 2 years to bring this place it's wonderful. And I think they did a fantastic, I'm not a historian, I don't know, but I think they did a really nice job. I was blown away. I am so excited as someone on the south side to have this beautiful resource right there. So please, before you make suggestions like that, like maybe just feel out other people who live around there, because quite frankly, we already feel like there's a lot that's going to be put into the south side. So then to actually suggest you're going to take one of the bright spots we have, along with the recreation center, another matter for another time. But I'm sorry, that's my initial reaction. I just wanted to share it. My guess is I'm voicing what other people feel as well.
thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, Freddie Gillespie, 78 Southfield Road. And I just want to, without much more detailed conversations, voice my absolute concern and non-support for mixed use, unless we're going to get fewer housing lots or less acreage that's required down there, because basically all that does is increase development in an area that you're going to be increasing development in. And I think it's inconsiderate to the neighborhood. What does mixed use bring? It brings more truck traffic because they've got to supply whatever business is there, right? More dumpsters early in the morning. It brings more traffic without dealing with, we're already being hit with how many units more of, in the 150 units of housing. And if you're going to put in.
So it's zoning. It's not housing.
All right, you've got 8 acres of undeveloped land that they want to sell and build right away. If that's not zoning to build housing, what is it? And if I say housing, that's what I see living next door to it. by right, 108 times 15, 120 units, and you want to add mixed use to that? I'm sorry, that's just not thinking through what the neighborhood needs. You want to have mixed use and you can get less units? That'd be something to talk about, but you're not talking about that. We're still going to have the same amount of housing. And you're going to add more traffic, more trucks. And if you haven't lived next to a business, some of you have had the impact of business noise. You're talking about adding that noise to residential neighborhood on top of the residential increase in population. It's just not, it's not well thought out.
So just to be clear, the suggestion for mixed use is in the industrial and business village zones. Those are zones that are already zoned for business.
They already are, but they're not zoned for 15 units per acre of housing on top of that. They're going to either be industrial or business use, or they're going to be single-family homes or what you can allow under the current zoning. It's not 15 units an acre.
Correct.
Plus mixed use. That's a big impact to that small neighborhood that's going to be hit the hardest from this zoning bylaw.
And Deschamps, I'm at 272 Corderville Road. On the other side of that, my fear is you're gonna build all these mixed-use storefronts or office buildings or whatever you're gonna use them for, and they're gonna remain empty. There's so many empty buildings around this town right now, and just to build more to be empty is crazy, you know? And if they aren't empty, also the effect of the traffic, which we're already talking 15 units on an acre of land and 2-car households. Where are all those cars going? Where are they going? You're talking 30 cars on an acre. So I just, you know, the mixed use thing really scares me only because I'm afraid it's going to be empty and we really need to fill up the buildings that are already here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Carter?
I just wanted to ask what the letter. Oh, I'm sorry. Paul Carter, 6 Hillside Avenue. I just wanted to ask whether the letter was going to be posted on the website. No, the letter about the MBTA to the agency.
We'll put it online.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, John Cage, 6 Parker Street. Been to quite a few of these meetings. The question I have, we ran into this very frustrating incident several months ago with the fact that what we expected on the model wasn't going to work for this part of Southborough. One of the parts of that was had to be contiguous, 10 acres and contiguous. I see you have, the parking lot for Fitzy's. We've got where the old bridal shop was, that piece of property, and you're talking about the industrial area behind it. But then we've got almost almost a half a mile till we get to that next piece of property. So now we're asking the state, I didn't read that letter fully. I didn't have enough chance to read that letter fully. I know we're asking for some sort of leeway here and there, but are we kind of now hanging ourselves to this hope that they will give us the leeway of splitting up this acreage?
So you can have the districts in 2 5-acre parcels.
Oh, we could.
Yeah.
It wasn't 10 acres contiguous in the half mile zone. It was 2 5-acre contiguous.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that answers that question, I guess. Is at this point in time, is the original plan that was talked about a month and 2 months ago, is that dead at this point in time, or are we still looking at that one as the one we're going to have to go with if the state says no to the options of?
So in order to get that to work, we would have to not follow the underlying zoning, and we would have to reduce the lot sizes significantly.
Mhm.
And I thought the feedback that we heard from the neighborhood is that uh, yeah, was not
Yeah, we
acceptable.
we were very much in agreement of that wasn't acceptable. Are we looking at the same type of thing with this though, with the industrial zones? Are we talking about 4-story buildings, 5-story buildings in order to get the numbers?
No.
Okay.
So that it would follow, so in industrial, it's 3 stories. And business village is 2.5, I think.
And I know that at this point in time, this is all just about zoning. In some point in time, a developer is going to gobble up this land. I mean, it's prime real estate. This is Southborough. What is the thought about septic and about the trash and all the wear and tear in this area? I mean, at some point in time, this is going to have to be a conversation piece, because at some point in time, if this gets approved, we can't stick a septic, you can't do a septic system. You're gonna have to put in a sewer to handle that type of capacity.
So that's on the developer. They have to figure out their own wastewater.
Okay, so that's not something we're looking at.
No,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Mimi, can I offer a suggestion?
Sure.
So mixed use is new to the conversation. I would ask the board, based on some of the feedback we've heard from the neighbors here today, maybe we take the time and ask the neighbors. I mean, a bunch of them are here. They can surely spread the word in their neighborhood and get an idea. I mean, this is their neighborhood. I'd like to know what they feel about mixed use in it. I don't quite know how we would do that, but there's ways to spread the word, but I would be interested to know what the neighborhood thinks about it before we actually start moving forward on that path.
I was going to say, we could always do another forum, like just a community forum. We did the workshops and the tables. Maybe we just make ourselves available. Not the whole planning board, but maybe a few of us make ourselves available for either office hours or just to be able to take public comment. Because I would agree with you. I'm willing to reconsider mixed use and really just go down the path of what the state is requiring at this time. And again, I would say that the state is requiring us to put a bylaw in front of the town. It's up to the town to make the decision.
Yes, sir.
Paul Carter, 6 Hillside Avenue. Just to put a little bit in perspective, the state and current thinking is that transit-oriented development is where we should going to in terms of where we put the mixed use so people can walk rather than having to drive their cars. I realize that this is enormous impact on this area, but just to put it in perspective, there are grants available to deal with transit-oriented development. And it's just one other thing.
Thank you. So anyone else have any comment on this? Anyone else online? So we're meeting again next week, so we can kind of mull this over for a week and come back next week and discuss it. Anything else on this, Mr. Stein?
Only that, I hear everybody's comments. I take them to heart, and I don't know where I stand on this at this point. I was willing to support the bylaw at town meeting, right up until the point that Mr. Pfaff, kind of revealed or helped reveal this, egregious error by Bowler Consulting. And I was not satisfied with their comments and their explanation. So, this is a long way for me from being something that I'm going to support. But then again, you know, we're going to have to take it step by step and see. The first step, in my view, is to see where this letter leads us with the state in terms of leeway / exception. And we take it from there and see where we stand at that point. And nobody's rushing anything. Nobody's rushing to get this thing, you know, done, so to speak. I feel like this board has always acted very conscientiously and will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. And I should mention that when we spoke with Chris Clutchman today, she said she was going to bring our concerns about the consultant that the state gave us to Mass Housing Partnership, who is handling the consultants. So we'll see.
So we
Right.
do have 24 attendees currently and no hands raised.
Okay, are we ready to move on to the hearing? So we'll address this again next week. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing, 118-120 Turnpike Road, modification of a 2019 major site plan approval and modification of a 2019 special permit for lower impact development.
Can you give a quick update? Yeah, so there is three on it. Well, if you could explain. All right, hi. We can read it again just to be safe.
Oh, we already did.
We did read it. So,
Okay.
okay. So if for those of you who weren't here on April 1st, I just want to give you a chance to get up to speed. At the April 1st opening of the public hearing, it was continued without testimony to this evening because we had not, the abutter notifications had not gone out for a couple of reasons. So what we did is there was an agreement that the abutters would be notified again and the applicant would handle that with the green certified return receipt green cards and mailing receipts, and the planning department would then publish it in the newspaper again under our budget. So that happened, and the ad was then run in, hold on a second, I just gotta see where we are here. 25. So the legal ad was published in the newspaper on April 8th and April 15th in order for the residents in the town to be aware and the abutters that this was continued without testimony, so everyone would have a chance to have their public input if they chose. In the meantime, let's see what happened here. The ZBA began public hearings as well to modify a 2019 special permit that they had issued on the project at the time, 2019, at the same time during which the planning board had received an application for a major site plan approval for a parking garage and site improvements, which included renovations to a courtyard between the two buildings, and that was in the project. And that also required a special permit for lower impact development at the time. If you recall, well, you may not recall, but during the transition, the property ownership changed, and there was a condition in the decision for major site plan approval, which indicated that a 6.2 acre portion of the parcel on the southern end was to be conveyed to the town Conservation Commission. During this time, with the transition of the ownership, things moved along and the courtyard had been rebuilt or rehabbed according to the plans with a pre-construction meeting, et cetera, for that piece of the work. Let's see what else we have here. And so that brings us here this evening. The current owner, which is FD 120 Turnpike LLC, is managed, it's owned ultimately by Mr. Ferris. Who is also here this evening, and his attorneys are here to represent him as well, to speak to this. So they submitted an application to modify those 2019 permits, the major site plan approval, and also the special permit for lower impact development. And what they're seeking is to, I don't know if nullify is the right word, but to remove that condition from the approval from 2019. In addition to, there was some information in the findings, which actually just tells you historic things during that permitting process, which may or may not be applicable to remove one way or another. So we've been in consultation with Town Council, Jay Talaman, and with us here this evening representing Town Council is Attorney Steve Chaplin, and he's on the far end there. Also, if you haven't noticed, one of the planning board members is joining us via Zoom, but we do have a full board this evening. So during the last 2 weeks or so, we've received several, we did now receive the green card certified return receipts that are required to be delivered with the mailing receipts. And I believe they were all sent and received, and we have evidence of that, checking it with the abutters list. We received a letter from the Open Space Preservation Commission commenting on the project, recommending not to remove that condition. We received a letter from the Board of, from the Select Board in favor of releasing that 6.2 portion of the property for the purpose of the 40B that is being proposed at that locus. We also received a letter from the Stewardship Committee recommending and asking that the property, the 6.2 acres of that 120 Turnpike not be nullified from the decision, that it should be conveyed to the town. We also received a letter from the Southborough Open Land Foundation with a similar concern and recommending the town receive that property. Then in addition, we also received several letters and emails from residents. See if I can just tell you. So we received an email from the resident at 3 Pine Cone Lane, Raquel Morales, in opposition to removing that condition of the major site plan. We also received an email from Ahmad Hashash of 5 Oland Lane, also in opposition. We received an email from Mary Kay Carter, 28 Maplecrest Drive, in opposition to the housing proposal and in fact, the conveyance of the property. And I may be adding some words here, but generally they were not in favor of removing that condition. We received an email from Roxanne Bruno of 5 Oland Lane expressing their opposition. We received a letter from Paul Carter, 6 Hillside Ave, with comments on the current modification request. Let me just see here. Also in opposition to the request to remove that condition from the decision. Then, we did receive an email from Mr. Matthew Probst, who is a resident, I just can't see where his address is, Woodland Road, asking to speak at this evening's planning board meeting. I think also in opposition to the modification. So if I missed anybody, you'll have an opportunity to speak during the public comment. We also received a letter from Conservation Commission who unanimously voted to request that the planning board not grant the requested modification and fully supports the Stewardships Committee's comments. Okay. And all these letters were provided to the planning board, the applicant team, the ZBA, and to town council, so that everyone would be informed. I think that's everything.
Just a couple points of clarity. This project is for a 40B, which allows a developer to override local zoning if 25% of the housing units that they build are at the 80% affordable rate for the region. The reason this is before us tonight is that the condition referred to in the 2019 site plan approval and lower impact development approval that required 6.2 acres be donated to the town, to the Southborough Conservation Commission, frustrates the ability of them to move forward with the 40B. So the zoning board is, who will hear the application for the 40B, is kind of on pause, seeing what happens here. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Good evening, everybody. I'm Brian Charville, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer and General Counsel for Ferris Development Group. We are here representing the applicant. And since this is the beginning of the substantive discussion, even though the public hearing began a few weeks ago, I'd like to introduce our team that's here. I'm joined by Louis Levine, our special outside counsel. My associate, George Bonin, is here. And our client, David Ferris, who owns Ferris Development Group and FD 120 Turnpike LLC, is here as well. So you all touched on this, but why are we here? We're here to ask that this board modify two decisions that you had issued in 2019. They allowed specifically a 500 space parking garage, as you've heard. But I just want to set this stage, especially given the public interest in this and the folks that are listening at home. And I want to briefly touch on the chronology. So the current landowner, FD 120, bought the property in August of 2020. The owner before that was Curo. At some point, I'm not sure when, I presume in 2017 or 2018, Curo decided that to lease up the office buildings that were there, they needed more parking. And so they thought, let's get permits to build a 500 space parking garage. In order to allow that to happen, they had to come to this board for, as Karina mentioned, the LID special permit and also a major site plan decision. They had to go to the ZBA for a special permit to allow the garage. And they had to go to the Conservation Commission to get an order of conditions. So they filed a notice of intent. And they got those 4 decisions. And all 4 decisions are recorded at the Worcester Registry. The decisions were issued all in August, September of 2019, recorded. They all reference, to one degree or another, this very similar language, part of which is on the screen right now, referencing a land donation. Ms. Demuria told the ZBA last week, as their modification hearing kicked off, that I think the history, I don't mean to misquote you, but basically the history was that Curo decided out of the goodness of their heart that they wanted to offer the donated land as part of getting the parking garage special permits. I think it's safe to say. And that seemed to be the impetus, but it was them out of the goodness of their heart offering it. So it's important, and we want to touch on this, and Lou will touch on it as well. When it comes to donations to the public, donations to a conservation commission or a select board, there is some formality to be followed. And that formality was not followed in this case. And there are emails that Karina was a party to, and we've seen, where there was discussion, okay, Curo said they were going to donate the land, and this was like spring of 2020. Where's the A&R plan that creates the 6.2 acre lot to be donated? Where's the select board action to accept the donation like the Massachusetts general laws require? Where's the Conservation Commission action to accept the donation? Those things did not occur, which we think is important because it affects the present validity or lack thereof of the land donation that had been offered by Curo. And it's analogous to, you probably have seen on select board agendas where, say, the United Way wants to contribute $500 to the town for a special purpose or a community event. Regardless of how much the dollar value is of the donation, the select board has to act to accept it. And that did not occur here. So then a few months, about a year after the decisions were rendered, but a few months after this discussion about formality and acceptance was happening, we become the owner in August of 2020. Curo is gone. Its idea of building a garage is gone. We have no intent of building a garage. We've taken no steps to build a garage, and we never will. It's important to note that no architectural plans have been drawn for the garage. No mechanical, electric, plumbing drawings have been made. No building permit has been pulled. So neither Curo nor we did any of the things that Curo had come to your board and said, we need a special permit for lower impact development. We need a major site plan decision in order to do this. Those things just didn't occur. So fast forward today, nearly 5 years later, the 4 permits, 2 before you, 1 zoning, 1 conservation, have all lapsed. And I want to quote for you the language that speaks to the lapse. And I've talked with the town's building official about this. He's the one that if we wanted to build a parking garage today, we'd have to go to and say, here are the drawings, give us a building permit. And his opinion is that he would not be able to do that because of the passage of time. Just a moment. All the decisions spoke to either 1 or 2 years for action to occur after the decisions were issued in late summer of 2019. And again, no actions occurred that showed reliance on those decisions. And so they lapsed then. They didn't lapse a year or 2 ago. They lapsed 3-4 years ago. And we could not rely upon them today. So that's the current status of those. So the chair mentioned that what's happening now is interest in building a 40B, as everybody knows, a multifamily project. Part of bringing the 40B forward was going to Mass Housing for what's called a project eligibility letter. That was issued by Mass Housing last summer. And in that, part of what Mass Housing has to look at is whether this is an eligible site and does the applicant, in this case FD 120, have site control. They looked at that. They took a comment letter from this board, which in fact mentioned the land donation, and Mass Housing determined that the applicant had site control and was able to proceed with an application for 40B to the ZBA. So they've looked at this. In terms of tonight, we're very grateful to the select board who has been very supportive of this project. And as recently as last week, they looked at this. They looked specifically at the land donation question, and they have issued a further letter of support saying that this is important to the community, that housing, affordable housing is a priority, and that this land donation be modified to allow it to go forward. So as we said to the ZBA last week, as that modification hearing began, and by the way, we'll resume at their meeting next Wednesday, the 8th, which I think is here at 7 p.m. It's our legal position that we don't need to have these modifications happen at all. Because again, of the passage of time, the lack of reliance on these permits. There, as one of the zoning board members mentioned, sitting over there last week, they've lapsed. So we're here though, in the spirit of compromise, because there aren't too many more steps, unfortunately, before this board or the ZBA, before litigation may have to occur. And we would truly like to avoid that, which is why part of what you've seen, I think, has been posted on your website, is a menu, if you will, of what the applicant is willing to do as part of, if this board would grant a modification and allow the provisions of your decisions that reference the land donation to be removed. So let me just reiterate those briefly. First of all, the applicant's in a position to purchase lot 7R off of Brigham Street. To purchase that and then donate it to the town for conservation purposes. That's been offered. That lot specifically abuts a water line and would be a very important donation of open space. Adjacent to the proposed 40B building, the applicant is open to conveying an easement to the Conservation Commission that would allow the public to use 4 parking spaces on the 40B lot in order to access the existing conservation land at Breakneck Hill. The applicant's willing to have its property, the 40B lot, connect to existing trails at Breakneck Hill. The applicant is willing to install even more significant green buffers around the 40B building to screen the conservation land from the building. The applicant's willing to install ADA accessible pathways and raised garden beds at the community garden at Breakneck Hill. The applicant is willing to donate $25,000 to the Conservation Commission for the purposes of environmental cleanup anywhere in the town. The applicant is willing to donate $25,000 to the Conservation Commission for the purposes of developing plans to identify and designate appropriate protection for the town's groundwater and surface water areas. The applicant's willing to donate $25,000 to the Conservation Commission to have an inventory and assessment done for forest resilience related to climate change. And the applicant is willing to donate $25,000 to the Conservation Commission for the purposes of trail maintenance and cleanup across the town. So with that said, I wanted to hand it to Attorney Levine, who is going to touch on a few legal points. Thank you.
I'll try to be brief and I appreciate the board's attention. I've been involved in many 40Bs over my career. Generally, although permits, comprehensive permits are issued, or in fact are issued, 40B has been difficult since the late 60s when it was first adopted to today for towns to swallow the fact that it allows overriding of local zoning. We're a state, 351 cities and towns, and we're based on home rule. And home rule is based on every city and town gets to do whatever they want on zoning. And I was here a little bit before we started, which is the inflection point of the MBTA zoning for some towns, and probably will be considered to be discussed going forward. So I understand that. Okay. We went to the first zoning board hearing. This issue wasn't brought up. That doesn't mean it's precluded. Please, I'm not saying that. It just wasn't brought up after after the first hearing. The applicant received an email from town council. Oh, gee whiz, you have this issue, and that brings us here tonight. I can tell you till the cows come home that I disagree. I believe that the land donation issue is not in effect anymore. And I'll briefly, without repeating what Brian said, highlight a few things. But either way, and this is not in any kind of threatening way, we're going to go forward with the 40B. So great minds, other than myself, are going to make an ultimate decision as to whether or not this issue affects, in fact, prohibits the 40B or it does not. I think the applicant's purpose in this process is to attempt to reach some negotiated agreement that doesn't make it all or none, right? Because that's the way it'll be. The 760 CMR 56.04 and talks about the project eligibility letter. And in 760 CMR 56.04 parent 6, and I'm paraphrasing, you have very good town council. but says that the project eligibility letter is conclusive determination as to the applicant has satisfied the requirements. 5604 paren C talks about the project eligibility determining site control. So I wasn't aware of it. Chairman was at the last meeting, mentioned that there was a mention of this to Mass Housing. So Mass Housing has made a determination that we have site control. And if in that methodology there was mention, and I can't tell you what Mass Housing did or didn't do with respect to this restriction, they issued project eligibility saying we had site control. Ergo, the donation, at least in their minds, wasn't a problem or didn't prevent the project. We can debate that all night. I do not intend to. I just put that out there because, again, if we can't resolve it, these are gonna be the issues other people are gonna have to decide, not me. There is a land court case, Brooks versus the Board of Appeals in 2011, wherein a butter, challenged site control in the land court, and the land court said the eligibility letter conclusively determined site control. Land court was not going to get into it. So if you could put up, could you put back up the permit, Karina? The thing we started with, in that first line? All right. Yeah, the thing you had in the very beginning, that when we first started. Well, it was what you had up there. Okay. Well, while she finds it, save some time here, but I'll still hopefully get it. The provisions of the special permits all indicated that the special permit was good for 1 year. That was an internal statement, and in section.
I have it here. And I began to mention it when I spoke earlier. In your lower impact development decision, quote, "This special permit shall lapse within 2 years from the date of issuance." And in the major site plan approval, quote, "Pursuant to section 174-10F of the Southborough zoning bylaw, this decision shall lapse within 1 year from the date of issuance."
That's after the signature lines, it says shall lapse one. That was pursuant to the applicable provision of the bylaw, and we just reiterated in the decision. Additionally, it's been more than 3 years, the special permits are good. So we have the issue of whether or not the permit has expired. The condition that was up on the board, 22 said, and again, I didn't write this, prior to the initial expiration date of this major special permit, the southern portion, the southern 6.2 plus or minus acres, southern parcel assesses map 37, parcel 20, contiguous to Breakneck Hill, shall be donated to the town of conservation, town of Southborough Conservation in a deed transfer, et cetera. So whoever wrote this, and it wasn't me, said prior to the expiration. So then we really come down to the nuts and bolts of why we're here and where we are. As Brian indicated, the garage never got built. Okay, it just didn't get built. We've asked the building inspector, could we get a building permit for today? And he said, no, because you don't have a special permit anymore. So it expired. It expired because of its own terms, because no action was taken. The subset of that is, well, part of the site plan was pavers on the existing office building they were asked for, and that was low-impact development. But for the major site plan, that low-impact development wouldn't have come into effect. In any event, the permit expired. If we're all gonna talk about the tail wagging the dog with respect to the pavers, we'll remove the pavers. I mean, it's a non-issue. We'll remove the pavers. We'll go. So where we are is that the permit never got exercised. The permit was for a 500 space parking garage. No idea why anybody would have proposed that, but I wasn't here at the time, nor was the bank trying to finance it, but the permit by its own terms, arguably or in fact, is expired. And, you know, so our position is simply that this was brought up with Mass Housing. They said we had site eligibility, ergo, you know, we control the site. It's up there now. You know, prior to the initial expiration, I don't know what they meant by that. Okay, the only way I can determine it, it makes sense that if it expires, the donation is not applicable. And there is case law that if you get a variance or you get a special permit and you don't exercise it, and there are conditions in there, then the town can't come back and say, but your conditions are still applicable. And you get the approval, the board grants approval for something and says, you know, there'd be certain conditions, including the land donation, but we never exercise it. It's kind of where we are. I know the overwhelming sentiment in this room is not supportive of my position. Not the first time in my career I've been in this position. I'm very aware of that. Okay, I don't take it personally. I guess the only thing I would say in conclusion is the developer has made an overture to try and compromise this. What the Board of Appeals will ultimately do with the 40B application, whether they will condition it in ways that will make people happy, whether they will deny it, that's a whole different issue. We're just trying to move past. That process has to go forward. And the Board of Appeals is not being emasculated by any of its rights in the 40B process to say the building is in the wrong, I'm making these things up. The building is in the wrong location. It's too high, it's too wide, it's too fat. The color of the brick is the wrong color, whatever. They have all those, you know, rights to look at that. We're just trying to get through this. No one can tell me that it's a slam dunk either way. You know, I know that's not the case. I've never said I could never lose a case, and I'm not going to tell you I can't lose this case if it got litigated. But there is a real issue. Everyone has to recognize on both sides of the matter as to whether or not the special permit's in effect, and ergo, whether the donation is still applicable. The alternate on the Board of Appeals, he got it without us saying, you know, he got it. So I'm not saying he's right because he's on my side. It's an issue. And all we're trying to do is to try and compromise it. You know, otherwise, if we weren't trying to compromise it, we wouldn't be making those offers. Okay. And so I'd rather see the improvements, the financial betterments, et cetera, go to a compromise than to legal fees 6 months, a year from today, 2 years from today. That's all. Simple as that. I understand where everyone's coming from, and everybody can get up and say that they want the donation with the intent of that preventing the project. But it won't stop us from going forward with the project. You know, and some greater minds than mine will tell us someday if that's the case. And we're trying to compromise it right now. That's it. Thank you.
And one final note as we head into the next part of the discussion. It's tempting to think of it as on the scales of justice as conservation land versus housing. But that's actually not what it is. It's a multi-year-old lapsed set of permits that reference a potential donation that's not been completed versus housing. And so it's not this binary thing that's black and white, like has been suggested by so many of the comment letters, because it's not conservation land guaranteed in hand for the town versus housing. It's a set of agreements that have expired, is our position, that could not be enforced today versus housing that's needed today and helps the town reach safe harbor at 10% under Chapter 40B. Thanks.
Thank you. Attorney Chaplin, do you want, would you like to speak to the town's legal position?
Sure, I'm happy to address any specific questions. I mean, I will say, I do agree with Attorney Levine that no one can tell someone that there's a slam dunk in either direction here. And I kind of feel like I spend most of my time in court, and I kind of feel like I'm in court listening to what the arguments would be on either side. Quite frankly, as town council, we take our job to give the right answer very seriously. There's not a case on point, all fours with this particular situation. I wasn't particularly persuaded by any of the arguments that were advanced. Lack of formality required by general laws. I presume we're referencing Chapter 184. I think that, the Kaloran case is probably the most, I don't want to get into all the facts, but the appeals court is distinguished between formalities for deeds and wills as opposed to land use conditions that come as a condition of a discretionary permit. So I'm really not persuaded there. No steps taken towards the garage. I understand that argument. That sounds like the lapse doctrine. So we can get into, I think the leading case on that's the Loberser case out of Bellingham. When you build the first phase of a multi-phase condo development, have you exercised your permit, so is putting pavers in, akin to the first phase of a condo development. I mean, we could be arguing that at the appeals court 2 years from now. I can't guarantee that I'm right on that, and neither can Attorney Levine. It's when I do my gut check, I agree with Attorney Tallerman. I think we're right on this. I think this is a condition that runs with the land. I don't think it matters that the select board has, not accepted the donation. But can I point to a case that says that? No. Can I point to a statute that says that? No. If the applicant decides to litigate this, will it take a long time? Yes. Will it take resources? Yes. Could we lose? We could. I'd rather be in our position, but I just want to, shoot straight with the board. It's not a, it's not a neatly settled issue where I can say this case, Supreme Judicial Court, facts are the same. Here's what the law is. Here's a guarantee. I can't tell you that.
Thank you. Mr. Stein.
Thank you. And thanks to the proponents for coming before us. Certainly appreciate the, attempt at cooperation with the town. I have a question for town council. In my experience, the 40B site plan review, and I believe this was covered by a proponent's council in their discussion, but just want to confirm with you that the site plan review would normally be with the Zoning Board of Appeals. Is that correct?
So site plan review is a creature of a local bylaw that would typically be in front of a planning board. A comprehensive permit application for a 40B project would be in front of a Zoning Board of Appeals as part of the comprehensive permit process. This is a pretty unique case. I can't say I've seen facts like this necessarily before, but this is properly before the planning board seeking to amend a.
No, I'm not talking about the matter of this agenda item. I mean the underlying motivator here, which is the 40B application.
I don't, if I could, I don't think they require a site plan because that's a creature of our local zoning.
Okay.
Right. So
Well,
all
it would seem that
local
it would
zoning
seem.
Yeah.
Consolidated
Sorry.
in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals for a 40B.
Okay. All right. That's fine. So, Counselor, is it possible for us to somehow, in addition to the proposed concessions to bind this proponent legally somehow to a site plan review in front of the planning board, and to make us, sort of as an asterisk or, exception to the 40B regulation, the site plan reviewer and approver.
Make sure I understand the question. Is the question whether the planning board could condition its modification on a post-comprehensive permit site plan review?
Yep, that sounds right.
I don't believe so. I've never researched the issue, but it does not strike me as being consistent with the spirit of 40B.
Right. So the proponent is willing to make, I mean, none of this is really. The proponent is willing to make a number of exceptions here in terms of other land donations, et cetera. Well, let me ask you this then. Are any of the proposed cooperative acts legally binding? In other words, do we have any recourse to enforce the agreed on concessions that have been proposed by the proponent here?
Yes, we could make those legally enforceable.
So why wouldn't we have the same enforcement capability if the proponent added the site plan review to be conducted by the planning board of the 40B application?
Because chapter 40B says that when that application comes to the town in that context, all of the process has to run through one single point, which is the zoning board of appeals. So if you put a condition of the modification in this case on additional process beyond the zoning board of appeals, you would essentially be rewriting 40B. So that we don't get to do. But if you want to say to this applicant, you're asking for a modification of a major site plan, we would do that conditioned on A, B, C, and D, i.e., what they've offered. Those are not process conditions. Those are, for lack of a better term, I guess they're conditions relating to impacts. Exactly.
Well, I guess I'll hold my comments then, and wait for the rest of the board. Thank you.
If there,
Thank you.
just two quick things with respect to the members. If there are conditions that this board and the applicant agree to relative to the comprehensive permit, then we would, if we come to agreement, then the comprehensive permit would be conditioned on those permits. We can enter into a memorandum of understanding. So hypothetically, if this board wanted the buildings to be pink, or, we could agree to that. The buildings, they want, or more non-facetiously, if the board says we want the buildings to be in a certain location, we could agree to that in a memorandum of understanding if we come to an agreement. So I'm not foreclosing that. So those are the site plan issues that you want to address, which you might not be able to address, or you won't be able to directly address in the 40B process. We're willing to do that. The last thing I would just say before we get any further in this, and town council can opine, or, we're applying essentially to modify or change an existing special permit. And as with any special permit application, the board has to act reasonably. So separate and apart from all my great comments of it applying or not applying, and town council and I are not sure of what day of the week it is, at the end of the day, if there's some fellow in a black robes trying to, or a woman in a black robes trying to sort this out, the issue will also become, was it reasonable for the planning board to not waive that condition in 2024, given what's happened before? I don't have an answer for that. I'm just saying that this is just not a cut and dry issue. So if somebody comes to apply for a special permit, you may be grumpy about them applying for the special permit, and you wish they didn't figure out that they could apply for a special permit. But you have to act reasonably. And if they appeal because they're not happy with, then the court's saying, did the board act reasonably? And so we have that also. At the end of the day, will it be unreasonable for the board to not, given the circumstances, we have to condemn? And it's a fact intense issue. That's not, neither myself nor town council can go cut and dry on that. That's it.
Ms. Houlihan.
Thank you. Thank you to the proponents for coming and presenting this evening. I appreciate the offer of concessions and willingness to compromise. I will say that having been on the 2019 board that approved that, I do feel it was the spirit, and where I'm an elected official of my town, I feel that the 6.2 acres deserve to be in the town's possession. And I will stick to that vote. So I appreciate your coming forward, offering ideas, but I very much support donating and accepting that. I think, unfortunately, timing of COVID had our entire state in lockdown for 700 days. Access to paperwork was challenging. So to be able to even keep up on some of these processes, yes, shame on us. Shame on the select board for not accepting that land. However, I do believe that we deserve that land, and that was the spirit of what we approved in 2019.
Ms. DeMaria.
And as you know, I sat on the Zoning Board of Appeals and approved the permit for the ZBA. So I very much feel the same way. I just wanted to pull out a couple of words to share with you, because I was going through my notes. Town council says that the permits were issued and exercised, and I agree. At some point, we learned, can't hear me? Oh, okay. All right, let me start in a different place then. An email was written to you on January 29th from Town Council Jay Tallerman. That was the day that the chair and I believe, and town planner were meeting with him and having a discussion about this matter. At that moment, he said, there's a significant issue. He said he believed that the permits were issued and exercised. He also said that he thought that as a matter of diligence, that mass housing should be notified. I wanted to let you know that I believe also in good faith that that was a gift to the town, which is why I made that point at the ZBA meeting last week. I'm aware now that we have other gifts to the town for permits that have expired in Southborough. And so I think it's, not in the spirit when a proponent gives a gift, and whether or not they build or, whether their permit lapses, you don't take away that gift, and we would have no right to go take away that gift years later. I wanted to ask you about if you know anything about the Public Lands Preservation Act.
In what way?
Well, I only really recently found out about it, that it was signed into law by Governor Baker in late November 2022. And it ensures that Article 97 was not only a policy, but it was enshrined into law. And I learned that it took 30 years to accomplish this. I had the opportunity just yesterday to speak to the state senator who brought it to the finish line. And I thought maybe this is Jamie Eldridge. And I had my 2 minutes with Jamie Eldridge, and I took the opportunity to ask him about this. And he said he had been working on it for 15 years, together with the person before him for 15 years. And that the bill provides clarity on the no net loss of conservation land and requires a 2/3 vote of the legislature. Now, that was the policy, but now it's the law. So I just have to say that I think that this was a gift to the town in good faith. I think that this is a special piece of property, and that there's really none other like it in the town, and that there would be a loss if we voted to waive that land. I have to also say that I think that this board is very favorable on housing. And so this is only 6.2 acres of the total parcel. And while that might not be your thinking to put the proposed 40B in a different part of the land, I think that it shouldn't be put on the 6.2 acres. That would be my vote. Thanks.
If I may, the office buildings are occupied and they need parking in order to be occupied. And in terms of the Public Lands Preservation Act, it's not conservation land today. I welcome you all asking town council if the town could enforce the donation based on what has and hasn't occurred. Right now, it's part of a much larger parcel. Again, there's not an A&R that creates the parcel. There's nothing to be donated. It's all a much larger parcel that is privately owned today. It's just not conservation land. And it's important for the audience to know that the town is only, according to last year's subsidized housing inventory, 77 units away from reaching safe harbor based on the last count. And with rental properties like this would be, all 60 of the units in this building, if permitted, would count toward the 77, bringing the town so close to being in safe harbor. That's all. So we're trying to facilitate that goal of the towns.
Ms. Brascio.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the presentation. I have a process question for you, Karina. I got a bunch of phone calls, obviously, on this. I'm sure all of us did. One of the questions asked was, as far as the abutters notification, the inhabitants of Southborough is an abutter to this project. Where did the card for that go? Where was it received? And who signed for that?
Was the front desk. It was either Katie Berry or Melanie Otsuka.
It was Katie Berry.
So it was Katie. So Colleen checked today and it was Katie Berry.
So where would it have gone? Should it have gone from there? Would it have stayed in the selectman's office? Where would it have gone? And why I'm asking is, people were upset that there was no notification. Had it been received and the public been made aware, unfortunately, most people here tonight, I think, heard about this from a post on Facebook yesterday. So there's a lot of frustration on the process. And when the abutters list had gone out, had the card or some type of notification gone on the town website or whatnot, we could have had a more informed discussion instead of people at the last minute. There's a level of frustration from the public. I will just say that.
So just to respond briefly to that. So when a certified abutters list is created and given to the applicant to notify the abutters, that's within a 300-foot radius of the subject parcel. One of those parcels, it was owned by the town of Southborough inhabitants. Therefore, the the legal notice, abutter notification went to the town of Southborough, to the town administrator's office, which is gated by the receptionist and his executive assistant. I don't know if it would have gone further to town administrator's attention or not. I haven't encountered this scenario since I've been here. So had I known, I might have been able to promulgate that more. But otherwise it went just like any other application would go at this point.
Okay. And I'm not criticizing.
Second level, only because my lack of awareness, I usually try to follow up if there's an additional step to something.
Okay.
But to me, it seemed like we just processed it per usual.
So again, I think for the select board here, maybe this is something that if something like this comes up further in the future, we can find a better way to communicate with the public is all. That's the point. I'm just relaying the frustration that I heard on the phone calls that I got.
So they wouldn't have gotten legal notice, every resident in town with a specific letter. or
Correct.
Green card, but we do publish it in the newspaper 2 Mondays before, but people would have to be aware to look there.
Right. But I mean, there's like news alerts on the town website that you sign up for. And again, there's better ways. So again, this is just, as we look to the future, there's probably a better way that we can communicate with the public. And again, so, the public doesn't have to hear about it and not be able to get all the information they need for the discussion. Secondly, I got a lot of feedback on why the town did not initiate the transfer. And thank you, Karina, for doing some of the digging that you did. There was a letter dated January 31st, 2020 that went to the town administrator and town council at the time. At the time, Stephen Cox was a representative from Curro Enterprises that owned the property, and they were seeking to initiate the deed transfer at that time. which was again prior to it being purchased by Ferris. So, again, COVID hit. I sat on the board at that time and I wasn't aware of this request coming in. So I don't know where it fell off to the wayside, you know, whether it was with council or not. But just, again, these are questions I was getting from the public that I felt it was important to address tonight as to why it didn't happen. Almost lastly, one of the things I think is important is we've heard a lot about site control. And I think town council had done a reply to Attorney Levine. Am I saying that correctly, sir? Thank you. Back in January 23rd of 2024, and with the chair's approval, I'd just like to read the 3 paragraphs, just so the public has a clear picture.
You have the floor. You can do whatever you want.
So town council, Attorney Taylorman said, well, it is my belief that the cases regarding site control are not applicable here. It is also clear that this issue was not raised to massed housing despite your client's knowledge of the condition. This is an issue, perhaps one that should be brought to their attention. This is also not purely a site control issue. The condition in question is a recorded obligation restriction that arises under a permit that encumbers land other than the 40B focus. A waiver of this condition is required in order for the project to move forward, and unfortunately, because it is off locus, the ZBA does not have the authority to waive the condition. Only the planning board does. Stated differently, we do not disagree that the applicant has an adequate interest in the subject parcel. Rather, this issue is more akin to the Groton case, wherein the applicant sought relief in the way of an exception from an off-site property condition. And lastly, having reviewed a few cases, it is clear that the underlying SPR was exercised, and upon such exercise, the obligation to convey the parcel matured and remains binding. The fact that neither the original applicant nor your client conveyed the property within the first year cannot reasonably be interpreted as a waiver of such condition. I cannot locate a case that stands for a contrary position, nor is the Rosenfeld case, which I was involved in, on point. So again, just so the public has a clear picture of what council had shared. And lastly, while I appreciate the offers of mitigation, I think for a 6.2 acre parcel that abuts one of the most special parcels of land that the town owns, I don't believe, as conservation did not either, that what's being proposed is adequate. So that's where I stand at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can,
I think so.
I just have a suggestion that may make a lot of people in the room happy and may curtail this meeting. We just like to withdraw the application without prejudice. I mean, I don't need to get pig piled tonight and have, you know, I got a sense of the board right now. I appreciate it. I mean, that's it sincerely. I could disagree. We can agree to disagree. But we would just like to withdraw our applications without prejudice, and we'll just proceed accordingly. You know, the board has made it very clear.
I haven't even been allowed to speak.
No, okay, but I just want to get that we would like to withdraw the applications without prejudice, period. That's where we are.
Ms. Latrell, before we move forward, I would like to hear what you have to say as a member of the board.
So I'm not an attorney, but action did occur on that site. And the permit says that it shall lapse if use has not commenced. And for the site plan, use did commence, so it has not lapsed. You can't build a parking garage because your special permit lapsed, and the special permit was solely for the parking garage, but the site plan and the low impact development were not. I have a different feeling than the rest of the board. My feeling is that if you're going to compromise, I would suggest really compromising, and the list, you know, as said, is inadequate, and you're offering land that you have no control over. You know, a smaller building, more, you know, a 50,000 square foot parking garage was proposed in the 2 acres of that 8 acre site. So if an 80,000 could be squashed down and pushed up, so part of the, you know, there could be a donation to the town and do a smaller 40B. That, in my eyes, is compromise, but what you offered is not. But then, that may be a moot point at this time. But there are a lot of people here. I think that we should hear what they have to say.
Mamie?
Yes.
Yeah, so you might recall during my comments, I just wanted to hear what the rest of the board had to say. I'm also of the mind of, hearing out a little bit better compromise. And that's why I was asking my questions to town council regarding options for the, possibly looking at how the planning board can be more involved in site plan review, et cetera, in the process. Just want, since you had said, unlike the rest of the board, I think that I am more aligned with you than you may have thought. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Matt Probst, 31 Woodland Road. I stand before you today representing a group of many, I feel like I represent the opinion of many people represented here in attendance. Thank you for taking time to listen to us. Many of us are abutters to the conservation land. I live at 31 Woodland Road, one of the closest abutters to this land we're talking about. And we represent probably most of the people along Woodland Road and Breakneck Hill Road. And additionally, we know that we represent opinion by many, not most of the town residents. We want to express our thoughts regarding the application for modification of the already exercised site plan. It was exercised when site improvements were made, not just the parking garage, but there were site improvements, and that's when it was exercised. And that's when it was triggered. We concur with the Stewardship Committee and Conservation Commission and strongly request that the Planning Board not grant this requested modification to the site plan. We want to be clear, we are wholeheartedly in favor of supporting additional 40B housing in Southborough. Affordable housing is critical for the diversity and well-being of our community. However, we firmly believe that the requirement to donate the land made in the existing site plan should not be modified. Additionally, the proposed location for what would be one of the tallest residential complexes in town is fundamentally inappropriate. The 6.2 acres in question are adjacent to Breakneck Hill, a cherished national resource that provides immeasurable ecological, recreational, educational, and aesthetic value to our town. Breakneck Hill is important for our community well-being, offering opportunities for hiking, birdwatching, and other outdoor activities. And this proposed 4-story, 60-unit apartment complex would loom over this pristine open space, irreparably altering its character and tranquility, and would undoubtedly disrupt the delicate ecosystem that countless wildlife and bird species call home. Moreover, had the existing site plan been followed to donate this land to the town, it is inconceivable that the town would now entertain the notion of carving out a portion of the conservation land for a development project. The very idea runs counter to the principles of conservation and responsible land stewardship. The real value of Breakneck Hill is the fact that it is contiguous space. Islands of unconnected land parcels that may serve well for development have a fraction of their conservation value in comparison with contiguous open space. Accepting a separate, non-contiguous parcel of land in exchange for this land would not even provide a fraction of the value to us as residents, nor would it adequately mitigate the harm caused by developing the land adjacent to Breakneck Hill. It is crucial that we preserve the integrity of our conservation lands and not allow them to be chipped away. In conclusion, let us work together to find more suitable locations for 40B housing that do not come at the expense of our invaluable natural resources. There may even be a possibility of finding a strategic win-win-win option that provides both 40B housing and open space preservation, such as the proposed joint Open Space Preservation Commission, CPC, Shop C effort using 61A Johnson land on Northborough Road. The future of Southborough's environment and character of our community depend on the decisions made with respect to this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Carter, 6 Hillside Avenue. I've been attending the ZBA meetings. I attended the Board of Selectmen meeting last week, and I'll try and be really brief. Couple things. One, they don't control the parcel. The parcel hasn't been separated out. 6.2 acres they're talking about as a project. They submitted it to Mass Highway. There's no separate land. They have not defined the land. They need to define the land by a definitive subdivision. That's the only way they can define the 6.2 acres. And according to 40B, they have to at least submit a preliminary subdivision plan. The town has planning board requirements for a preliminary subdivision plan. We've asked for it a couple times. They haven't provided it. One of the things they're offering is to restore the landscape buffer. Their first site plan showed a landscape buffer next to the corner of the building. When they decided that they were going to provide some alternates to negotiate this, they took that off the site plan, okay? This is the kind of spirit that we're dealing with here. They haven't offered to give all those alternatives. They've only offered to give her one 25,000, one with maybe a trail. It's more appropriate and justifiable value for the existing residentially zoned 6 acres would be $1.8 million. All you have to do is take 6 acres, 1 acre lot, which is more than adequate, at $300,000. Each one of you, if you look at your tax bill, you'll see that you're assessed $300,000 for your lot. 300,000 times 6 times, $1.8 million, okay? The other thing is that, like I said, they need to do a subdivision. I won't go, so I asked the question, when is the applicant planning to submit a preliminary subdivision plan in a form acceptable to the planning board? This is a question that the planning board should pose to the developer. Okay. Also, the 6 unit is proposed to be 4 stories high. There are no other 4-story buildings in Southborough. The only 4-story building is Madison Place. Okay, that's on the Westboro town line. And all you have to do is look at that apartment building up on the hill and picture that on this piece of land. And that's what we're talking about here. Let's be real. So I think that a fundamental question is whether the ZBA is going to approve a 4-story building. Let's also be clear that the 40B process requires that the ZBA is supposed to represent the other boards. It's not supposed to supplement the other boards, okay? So the planning board has given their comments. The ZBA may or may not follow those comments. So you guys got to go to the ZBA meeting, okay? The ZBA is the one that has the power. And with 40B, the ZBA has the power to give the developer anything they want. That's the way the law is written, okay? The other thing are minor things. You know, we brought up there's no sidewalk on the plan. They haven't added the sidewalk to the plan. Yes, we'll do a sidewalk. They haven't added the plan. When are you going to add the sidewalk to the plan? The other thing is any development has to have a peer review, okay? So there's been no peer review. There's talking about a peer review. When is the developer going to submit the plans for the peer review? The other thing I would say is that at the last meeting, there was some comment that the town is kind of going around things, you know, because they bring up this land donation at this point, not at the beginning. Well, I would submit that my personal opinion is that the developer has been trying to circumvent the process, not the town. The developer first went to the Board of Selectmen. So the Board of Selectmen wrote a letter in support of this project without any consideration of any of the comments by any of the other town boards. The Board of Selectmen is not the zoning board in this town. They just said they wrote another letter in support of this project. So just to keep it in mind, the next thing that the developer did, he went to the town council. He didn't go to the planning board. He went to the town council. The next thing he did that we just found out just recently, he's gone to the zoning building inspector. And he said that, well, the zoning inspector has the one to decide what the land use should be for this project. I beg to differ. The zoning inspector has responsibility to enforce the decisions of these boards, not to come up with his opinion of what the land use should be. So I think it's great that they want to do 40B. I don't think this is the right location. The other thing is, think of the logic. So the logic is we're going to get some land so that we won't be subject to 40B anymore, okay? But they're saying, well, you should do our 40B so we won't have to approve projects like this. There's no logic in that. I understand the thing about affordable housing, and the first item about the MBTA, affordable housing, that's where we need to talk about this kind of stuff, okay? And the Zoning Board of Appeals is the only board that controls this. So you got to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals meetings. You have to write your letters to the Zoning Board of Appeals because they're the ones that are going to make the decision.
Madam Chair, if I may just correct a few points of misinformation.
There's a couple more public comments and then you can.
Hi,
You-
I'm Isabel Kerber and I live at 77 Breakneck Hill Road. We brought our lot from Ray Davis. I don't know how many people here go back to when he used to. My son used to feed the cows. And I've been the community garden coordinator for 5 years. So Breakneck Hill Road is very dear to me. We built our home in the area where Ray Davis used to cut the trees. And we have left, and that's where we built our home. And the rest of our property is exactly the way it used to be over 30 years ago. But one thing that I noticed that no one has mentioned is that Breakneck Hill Road is a very narrow road. I see when trucks come by, they can barely make it. So I'm wondering, how can you get so many cars on that road when barely 2 cars can go by and it has to be very slow or else you'll end up crashing. So that's the other question that I have. In order to have such many buildings, or the building with so many condos, everyone is going to have minimum probably 1 or 2 cars. So has anyone thought about the impact of those vehicles driving every single day back and forth on Breakneck Hill Road? How can, the road is going to have to be widened. So that means that the town will have to take, land from our property, from the property of everyone in Breakneck Hill Road to make the road wider. And that is something no one is considering here. People are putting proposals. So I'm wondering, I mean, I know that the town has the right to take land, dominant domain, but I hate to see our road widen just to build those condos. I mean, I don't think, and that will change that will change the community, that will change Breakneck Hill Road forever. It will never be the same. So I just want you to consider that.
So that is a very good question, and that's a question for the zoning board. Our job tonight is very narrow, and it's just looking at that condition that we had in 2019 in our site plan that said that 6.2 acres of that land would be donated to the town. But all the other specifics should go before, questions should be raised before the CBA.
Yeah, and this is the reason I want to bring it up now, before it's too late to consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so just so we all understand, we're not debating the pros and cons on the 40B itself and, traffic and height of the building and all that. That is the zoning board of appeals and it's not in our hands. So any comments, if they can go specifically on this condition in the major site plan. Thank you.
And I promise I won't repeat anything that's already been so well spoken. So thank you both who've gotten up, and thank you to the planning board for letting us speak, because I'm not sure if everyone heard, but I'm fairly certain the representation for the council tried to shut down public comment because he didn't want to hear us. Well, we sat here and listened to you. So you're going to sit here and listen to us.
If you could just introduce yourself again, Kristen.
Schmidt. Sorry, Kristen Laval, 12 Southwood Drive. So really quickly, agree with everything said, obviously. I just want everyone to remember, this is not charitable. This is a premier piece of property and a reservoir, and they're going to profit really big time from this. So of course, like there's nothing charitable about this. This is honestly, it's not going to do, if anyone hasn't read the Facebook post, you should, because there's a lot of great information there. These aren't affordable units, not for our teachers, not for our policemen. So do not be fooled by that. I understand it's not about that, so I'm sorry. You know what, there's nothing else really to say because all has been said, but I will please ask you to consider this. Our select board did unanimously vote to support this last week. Our elected select board. Our planning board is also elected, and they listened to us tonight, and they were very thoughtful. And I don't know why that didn't happen with our select board. Thank you very much.
And I know we're all very passionate, but if we could refrain from clapping.
When I get up here. I'm Joyce Greenleaf, and I want to speak on behalf of the Stewardship Committee, which I chair. And so thank you to the Planning Board and to Conservation Commission, to the neighborhood, to Open Space, and the others who have supported our position, which is that the modification not be granted for Breakneck Hill. Frankly, there's no alternate compromise of a plot of land here or there that would suffice. I think you said it very well. Those aren't contiguous, and it's Breakneck Hill that is the crown jewel that Southborough has. So, we manage as stewards that land to uphold and promote conservation values that prioritize habitat, biodiversity, and native species, and to create opportunities for passive recreation, walking, birding, enjoying nature. And I think it's a testament to the work that gets done there to preserve that property by all the folks who are out here tonight supporting stewardship's position and others' position, which is to not accept the modification. We oppose it because, we also oppose the development. The development impacts Breakneck Hill Conservation Land in adverse ways. It would damage habitat. Breakneck Hill is home to at-risk species, bumblebees, ground nesting birds, native plants, and more. And we specifically manage the property for those. So we believe there could be further adverse impacts by development so close to our trails, introducing invasives via loam and gravel that would be brought in, destroying that habitat for pollinators, birds, and other animals, adding nighttime light that disrupts migrating birds, that interrupts the reproductive cycles of our pollinators and at-risk species such as fireflies, and adding a massive structure that would aesthetically be detrimental to the property. So we host hundreds of visitors a week. I hope you all continue to come and enjoy Breakneck Hill and come out and help us manage the property. And again, urging the planning board to not accept the modification. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Freddie Gillespie. I'm Chair of the Open Space Preservation Commission. I also sit on the Stewardship Committee. So I couldn't agree with what our Chair Joyce just said now. And as a matter of fact, I was out there for like 8 hours today working to help maintain the biodiversity hotspot of this property that has been accomplished through not just the Stewardship Committee, which has been the leading force, but hundreds and hundreds of volunteers and thousands of volunteer hours, state grants, you know, your tax dollars help. This is not just a simple one property. It is, as we have talked about, a gem. It is known as a biodiversity hotspot, not just for the town, but regionally. So, and how can that be lost by a building next door? There's many ways. The light pollution is significant. Even if they were to follow our lighting bylaw, that's a minimum. It doesn't go far enough to prevent the degradation that's going to happen. We are going to lose bird species there. Anyone who's been there and seen the beautiful indigo bunting? We have kestrels, we have bobolinks, we have many species of highest conservation need in the state, just in birds. We have a major pollination research program going on there. All of that is at jeopardy because it's not just one small building footprint. It's going to expand and continue on and on throughout the property. So we all, I shouldn't say we all, because we don't, but the citizens in this room that are here to say no to the modification all know the specialness and the beauty of that property. So I don't need to belabor it, but I wanted to make a couple of points that have been brought up. And Paul's comments were very good. I appreciate them, but I disagree with one. He was saying you have to go to the ZBA. Only if the planning board modifies the condition, because if you don't modify it, they can't move forward. It goes to, obviously, we've heard it will be litigated. I'm understanding that that's not going to cost the taxpayers money. It's going to be expensive, but that's part of the contract. So you're already paying for it. That's my understanding, right? So we don't want litigation. We hope that we could avoid it, but we don't have to go through all those ZBA hearings if the planning board does the right thing and doesn't modify that condition. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that condition. When the deadline was for submitting your letters to Mass Housing, which the Open Space Commission, by the way, never got notified. You know, we got notified through the grapevine, never officially notified by the town. So then we got an email saying there was a date we had to have our letter in to the select board. Never got notified that they changed it and they were having a public forum that we weren't ready for because the deadline date was later. So that public forum that we were never notified of, the select board said, well, they would include, the stewardship got their letter in time just because they met the Monday before. Their letter got included, but not considered by the select board. So the Open Space Preservation Commission submitted our letter after everyone else's letters, right? But we submitted it within the deadline. And then later, when the letter came back to everyone from Mass Housing with all the letters, ours wasn't included. So I looked, I made sure it had been sent, and I called up and I spoke with and I'm sorry, I forget the name, but the woman who we had addressed our email to. She said she would go through and look, and she goes, oh, I'm sorry, we found it. But it wouldn't have made any difference because we addressed all your concerns. And I said, you know, we brought up zoning concerns that I don't believe the other letters addressed. She goes, it doesn't matter because that's not our goal, our job to look at. That's your local boards to deal with. We just say it's okay to go forward. That, I don't have that as an exact quote, but my understanding is we brought up the subdivision issues. There's other issues here. I didn't remember about the 6.2 acres at the time, but my understanding is saying that because they gave you an eligibility, I can't even say the word, eligibility letter, does not mean they gave you a pass on that all of the zoning and all of the site plan conditions are okay. Did they specifically say that? Not in the phone call I had. So I just wanted to make that point because I did have that conversation. And I would encourage everyone, because this is probably going to be going down the road, and even if it doesn't, it's worthwhile to read the letters. The letters from the Open Space Preservation Commission, from stewardship, from conservation. And I heard there was, I mean, not I heard, I read it. There's a wonderful letter written today from the Southborough Open Land Foundation. And as soon as that is publicly available, I think everyone should read it. It is really well-written and it describes so many of the things we're hearing tonight. So I urge the planning board, just say no. It's the wrong project, the wrong place. Oh, final comment. Sorry, I was going to end on that. The idea of compromise, the Open Space Commission did discuss this. We had the plans out, we looked, we said, could they make it smaller? Could they move it? None of that is going to make a big enough difference to impact the negative results of building right there. And we could see, if you go up there, there's another building much further back that has some impact. This is going to have way more impact on it. It's a much smaller building. You're going to have lights going up the driveway, the car lights, the exhaust. All of those things are going to end up in a direct reduction of wildlife, loss of birds who we can't afford to lose more, and we've worked so hard to increase them there. So I'm just saying, you know, what are you going to compromise on? A smaller building? It's still too big. It's still in the wrong place. Let's keep the open space because this town wants more open space. It's in all of our plans, you know, our master plan, our Open Space Commission has been charged to work on acquiring more open space. And you know what? The Open Space Commission's charge, facilitate the preservation of open space. You know, the lowest hanging fruit is to keep the open space you already were gifted. So thank you.
Thank you. You didn't clap for Joyce, so you can't clap for Freddie.
I don't
Yes,
think
sir.
anyone will clap for me, but I'd like to introduce myself. My name is David Ferris, and I'm the plan sponsor. And I live here in town. I've been a resident for about 50 years. And I'd sort of start the conversation by saying this is a great example of great town government when everybody shows up on an important issue that directly affects them. And I think that reading the room, any responsible developer would do what Brian did earlier, which is say, let's put a pause on this and hear more direct feedback from the community and try and come up with a solution or a process that better implements both the community's goals holistically that are in the room and the bigger picture goals of what we're trying to achieve as a community with affordable housing. I think that as a lawyer by training and enough experience to be around a lot of lawyers, litigation is always the last path. Sitting down with people and trying to hammer out something that makes sense for both sides in a constructive way is the way you get deals done. This property I bought when everybody was masked up, just like many of the residents who are buttressing this land. I own that land just like you own your backyard, buttressing that land. And so my ownership and title in that land right now is the same as it was with yours. So if you bought your home and a prior homeowner made a deal with the town to give the town some land and the town didn't act on it and came back and said to you, hey, look, I'd like you to give me that land even though those permits expired, I think you'd probably see it the same way we do. But that being said, I think Ms. Luttrell raised a very good point tonight, which is the blight in the community with a big 500-car parking garage in the center of a parking lot really pre-COVID, when a lot of people weren't going to work, seemed to make a lot of sense because buildings had a lot of density. Maybe there's a path where that was cited to potentially put a building. There's septic issues, there's planning issues. Yes, with significant expense, we could look at those alternatives, but those alternatives that we look at really won't matter much if we can't get your buy-in and support for the project. So what I would propose is what Brian proposed, which is let our council get an email and phone number and address and name of each person who's here tonight and passionate about their community and try and come up with a plan or design. And perhaps it's not on the land that was previously promised to you. As a guy who grew up here, I went to Neary School and I went to Algonquin and all that, and everyone in this room learned to read at an earlier age than me. And thank God for Mrs. Bachman, who taught me how to read here with dyslexia. But the point of the matter is, I'm a compromising guy who's trying to do the right thing in the community. And perhaps we could all sit down with George, Brian, and maybe we'll go back to the engineers and see if there's a plan where we get some parking requirements waived by the planning board on the building piece of the site, and make something that works. Because it's clear to me that people are passionate in the room. There were people who were texting me during the room that are sitting in the room tonight that wanted to speak in favor of it tonight. And I frankly said to them, there's really not a big point in doing that because there's pretty strong opposition to this the way it's cited now. And there's the legal rules and winning by litigation. And I think this town's been through an awful lot of that. And this is one more project that I think would accomplish some very big housing goals. We're way below where we should be. And frankly, we should be holding our head low because we look and feel like a community like Weston, a Dover, a Not Me. We don't want you here. Yes, we'll put it in print that we want affordable housing, but if it in any way touches us, if there's going to be more people using our open space, we don't want it. I don't think that's really what the people in the room are talking about. I think they're saying, try and come up with a plan that works for us and doesn't impact the prior owner that owned this property before me, that maybe we could still get you to honor his commitment, even if we missed it, even if we never filed the right paperwork and didn't do our due diligence, try and be a part of our community and work with us. So I think that was the spirit, which I'm sure Brian suggested a recess to meet with you guys. So thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
I'll be real quick, I promise. Sarah Whiteman, 156 Parkerville. I have a couple logistical questions as I sit here this evening. I am sure I'm not the only neurodivergent person in the room. My brain is stuck on a couple points. This agreement, this arrangement was made under not Mr. Ferris, but the previous owner of the property. Is that correct? And the arrangement was set to be put into motion as soon as alterations were made on the property. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. So what I'm wondering is why it is put on all of our boards and the townspeople to defend a precious and beautiful property that should not have been included in the sale to Mr. Ferris. And that's unfortunately not on us. Also, 25% of properties at 80% of retail value is not affordable.
Thank you. So is it still your wish to withdraw?
Yes, after a couple of corrections. First of all, mass housing mandates that an applicant, as part of the project eligibility phase, go to the town for input. And that's why the applicant went to the select board first last May and briefed them on what was proposed. It wasn't an end run around anybody. It was going to the select board as the chief executive body of the town to gain their input. On another point, going to the building inspector as the zoning enforcement officer is what the process requires. If you want to find out whether an previously issued permit is valid and can be acted upon, you go to the zoning enforcement officer, who now is Mr. Novak. That explains that. Anyone who's following the ZBA process would know that in late March, the applicant submitted revised site plan drawings, which, based on ZBA input, were intended to meet the subdivision standard. They include a profile and other subdivision requirements. And it includes the sidewalk that the ZBA said they would like to see included. There's in the drawing a sidewalk that runs all the way from Route 9 up to the proposed site of the 40B building. So if there's going to be misinformation out there, I want to make sure we correct that. The applicant's latest filings are always available with the ZBA. I think on their website, they have a project-specific web page that shows any filings the applicants made and all the public input that the ZBA receives from anyone. Thank
So
you.
you're saying you did file a preliminary subdivision plan?
No, I said that the applicant's most recent site plan filings meet the subdivision standard, which is specifically what the ZBA had asked for.
So they asked for a subdivision
Correct.
plan.
Correct. We modified the original submission to show the way creating the new lot complying with the subdivision, in our opinion, subdivision rules and regulations, and or we requested certain waivers, just like we would do if we showed up at the planning board.
Okay.
Also, the mention at the first meeting, the planning Board of Appeals meeting, this is kind of a corollary, but we were asked to suggest to have a sidewalk running from the project to Route 9. The new plans show that. Peer review, we've been waiting on peer review, and I don't blame anybody just because it got delayed and there was requests.
Understood. Yep.
So, and the idea that I'm somewhat comporting or talking to town council wrote to us, after the first Board of Appeals meeting and said, gee whiz, I think you got a problem. And I responded. We didn't do an end around. I mean, I got a letter, or Ryan got a letter from town council. We also discussed this matter with town council before we made an application. This issue wasn't brought up. I've been doing this for a long time. That doesn't make me brighter than anybody in this room. I mean that seriously. But the idea that a developer, including my client, is in some kind of conspiratorial, process just doesn't advance the ball. It just doesn't advance the ball. We can disagree as to where we are about the 6 acres, but these allegations, without foundation, I think Brian and I felt compelled to respond to them. But we've done everything by the numbers, okay? And we've tried to, and the process is obviously always fraught with stumbles along the way and differences of opinion. But we haven't hit, we reached out to the town, we said, what do we have to do? We were told, et cetera. So in any event, we would like to withdraw the application, we'll figure out what to do, the next step. That's it. And
So Mimi, I could move to close the public hearing if that's where we're at.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
so
Mr.
the
S-
motion. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to make the motion to, if you're ready, Mimi.
Yep.
Yeah, so the motion is to close the public hearing for 118, 120 Turnpike Road modification to 2019 major site plan approval.
In the low impact development.
Thank you.
Second,
moved.
as modified.
So I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Oh,
Um,
we've just closed the public hearing.
In your discussion there, in your vote?
Well, the discussion is among the board. Do you have something
I do.
different?
I actually wish for you to actually vote on this, so there's a public record. of-
We will, sir, after we close the public hearing.
Thank you.
So Latrell, yes?
Yep, Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Brascio, yes.
So the motion is to accept the applicant's withdrawal without prejudice for 118, 120 Turnpike Road modification, 2019 major site plan approval and special permit for lower impact development.
Second,
Madam Chair, can we discuss this?
Sure.
So I agree with the gentleman that just got up that how are we on record if we agree to the withdrawal? And do we need to accept the withdrawal? So I know that the zoning board of appeals is waiting for an opinion from the planning board for their meeting this week, I think, or their next meeting. So I think we should be on record with a vote.
We always have a, yeah,
We have an opportunity to meet with town council for a few moments to discuss this as where your client, as town is your client?
Is the request for confidential off-the-record communication?
Would that be required?
We would need to notice that as an executive session meeting. I mean,
If we-
there has been threatened litigation tonight, so,
Mhm.
on the record, so we could do that, but we would have to notice that to, be consistent with so as not to violate
Then post it.
it would have to be posted more than 48 hours in advance. So we could not at this moment kick everybody out of the room and discuss as much as I might like to do that.
And there's no other avenue. That would be the avenue to do that.
So could you advise the board on either accepting the withdrawal of the application or voting up or down on it?
I mean, I can't give you any more guidance as to tell you what the standard is, which, Attorney Levine was correct on earlier. You have to, the board has to act reasonably, right? The board cannot act arbitrarily or capriciously. One thing I will correct earlier, I just feel, when this was said, that all the power here is with the ZBA. And Madam Chair, I think you sense this, that's not really accurate. All the power here is with the planning board. This is a unique situation where the planning board holds this string. I chair my own planning board. This almost never happens. The planning board's in a position to say to the applicant, we want X, Y, Z. That's a compromise we'd be willing to discuss, which you put on, and you've basically said this in your comments. So, as to what's a reasonable or unreasonable reason not to, not to allow a request to withdraw, that's really difficult for me to comment on from a legal standpoint. From a practical standpoint, which sometimes is what legal advice is, if you allow that request to withdraw with prejudice, you as a board retain your power because they could come back and ask again in relatively short order. If you deny that request, and if we take what they say at face value, this is going to be tied up in court for a number of years. A long-winded way of saying I don't really know, but I hope that's helpful.
Mimi, can I throw something out there? So I think if we're worried about what the record's going to reflect, I think by them withdrawing reflects the record. If it was going to be a positive vote of the board, they certainly wouldn't have withdrawn the application. So I think accepting the withdrawal is, in my opinion, the way to go.
Could I just also add that there's another application, I believe, accepted by the Conservation Commission for their order of conditions, which is of course the same condition. So may I ask the proponent whether you are going to withdraw from the Conservation Commission as well?
We've not yet filed with the Conservation Commission to modify their 2019 order.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought we received some communication from the agent that she was accepting your modification.
I don't think so. I think that was them giving feedback just to this board, but we've not filed a modification with them. I'm
I
clear of
think,
that.
Mr. Talaman pointed it out recently, that there was a conservation. committee.
So we've closed the hearing, so the discussion has to be right
I
here.
apologize.
Sorry.
So I would just like to clarify that I believe an application was submitted to conservation and town council was asked if it was appropriate to accept that or not. And I believe it was notice of intent filing for the 120 Turnpike locus, but not in the form of the 40B. That they were taking what appears to be the southern portion defined on the plan that was submitted as a new property line, which I don't understand if it's existing or proposed, but it says new property line, but not specifically for the 40B. It was presented, in my opinion, as this is a notice of intent for this building on this site, on this piece of that property, which I wasn't clear because I thought that you would need a special permit from the ZBA to add a building to a site because that site is not subdivided yet, in my impression. if
So
that's
I-
clear.
Okay, so I just want to say, but we didn't complete the vote to close the public hearing.
We did.
We
I di-
did,
I didn't, oh, we did vote? Okay.
yes.
And I wanted to get some
Sorry,
clarification here
one,
in,
so just to be clear, the motion that's on the floor right now that's under discussion is to accept the applicant's withdrawal,
Correct.
which I'm prepared to vote on whenever the rest of the board is.
so I have a question for town council, if I can just clarify. I thought you said, I heard withdraw with prejudice.
I believe the motion on the table is to withdraw without prejudice, which.
That's
means
correct.
They could bring a new application before the board.
Okay, and then do we also have the opportunity to extend the public hearing?
The public.
No,
hearing
we
has been
closed it.
Closed.
It's closed.
So it's
Okay.
over.
And so my feeling on this is if we're looking for compromise, voting it down is not going to move that forward. So I'm in favor of accepting the motion to withdraw. So is there any other comment? So let's vote on the motion. Do we have a second?
Second,
No more discussion. Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, no.
Brashear, yes.
So the motion passes. Thank you.
Motion is to allow the withdrawal without prejudice.
That is correct.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Mimi, do you want to recess for 2 minutes so everybody can go?
So moved.
Do we have a motion, Jesse, to recess for 2 minutes?
So moved.
Could I have a second on the recess? All in favor?
Second.
Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes. Demaria, yes.
Yes, Lisa.
Demiria, yes.
Brashear, yes.
We're gonna, Jesse, we're gonna recess for 2 minutes until the room clears out.
Understood.
Item on the agenda is a discussion item 241, 245 Turnpike Road, Car Condos, request for extension of major site plan approval. You want to update us, Karina?
Sure. If you recall, Planning Board approved major site plan and low impact development special permit for 241, 245 Turnpike Road for car condos, a little less than a year ago. They have been working on, perking for septic system, design to make sure they can site it properly at the site. So they requested the planning board for a 1-year, extension to the major site plan approval. In the interim from their request, they had been issued a notice of violation because somebody had dumped some stuff on the site. The site hadn't been closed up, various reasons. So our interim building commissioner was very thorough, saw these things and issued this notice. And they wanted the opportunity to clean up and take some action to show the planning board that they're not taking that lightly. And then asked to go to May 6th instead, which still allows them time prior to their expiration. So, it's my understanding, just so everybody knows, when people talk about the permit was issued, town council has let us know through the ZBA that it's that after the 20-day appeal period, so you get a permit approved, the decision gets written, gets signed by the chair, it goes to town clerk, it gets filed. 20 days from that is the appeal period, then it lapses. That's when it's considered issued. Unless it's appealed, then it's issued when the appeal is resolved or not. Okay? So that there's always been confusion because we write it in the decision. But if anybody forgets, I have saved that legal opinion. So we're looking forward to them to coming next Monday.
So they're just going to come back. We don't need a motion or anything, do we, Jesse?
No,
Uh,
no,
In
it's an
my
informal,
opinion, no.
it's a discussion item. It's not a public hearing.
Well, if they requested the extension, wouldn't that be on the board then to vote to accept that request?
They asked to come back next week. They hope to be in better standing with the town when they come and ask for the extension.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Okay, so that will be next week. So the next item on the agenda. The next item on the agenda is Stonebrook Village subdivision.
Oh, that's the old one.
Is this the wrong?
Yeah, it was revised.
Uh-oh.
That's okay.
Oh. Strike that. That's not on the agenda. Is a discussion item residents of Park Central? Thank you. Sorry about that. And I think that's just a standing item, just to let people know that the ZBA has continued that until July 17th, 2024, and it's still pending status of land
Yeah.
court.
Correct.
And just as an aside, Park Central also received a project eligibility letter from Mass Housing. So they say that a project is generally acceptable, but obviously this is in land court, so that isn't definitive. So any other comment on that? No. Jesse, do you have any question or comment on that?
No, thanks.
And then next item on the agenda is 120 Turnpike Road, 40B. And I think this is just an update that the ZBA has continued that hearing and the modification of the finding for the 2019 special permit until May 8th, 2024. Any question or comment on that, Jesse?
No, thanks.
Nope. Okay.
Mimi, can I, just
Yes.
a comment that, I can't exactly remember how it ended with the ZBA last week, but they were waiting for the other boards, us and, I thought Concom, but I'm not sure. So do we have any obligation to get back to them? Let them know what happened?
Certainly, we'll update them and let them know what happened to you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm tempted to ask Mr. Maria, if, would that have changed your vote on our acceptance of the withdrawal if you knew that we could, that we would be sending a letter to the ZBA? Because it seemed like you were very eager to have the board's sentiments put into writing to the ZBA. Is this adequate? I guess I'm asking.
Well, I think they didn't take a position, if I'm recalling correctly, because they were waiting for us. So I think.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to, because I think that although I'm probably not in the same mindset as Mr. Murray, I do feel like it might be a good idea for us to summarize the board's views, maybe. I don't know if that's something you're open to.
Certainly. The rest of the board is. I'll put down.
Yeah.
Do you want me to do it and go work with town planner?
Good luck with that.
I'm thinking, just brief, what was,
Yeah, and
although this isn't really this agenda item, but what was offered was not acceptable, hoping for better compromise, and the proponent withdrew.
And we'll put that into a letter of vote tomorrow. Karina will ask me to write that.
If that's.
I just would add, I'm not sure that everybody feels exactly the same way about this. So maybe we can each have some input on it. And we're meeting, well,
Next
that was
week?
something. Well, I was going to actually question that during the planner's report, but we're meeting soon enough, right? Even if we didn't meet next week, if we meet May 20th, that's probably prior to the ZBA's next hearing on this, is it not?
Yeah, they're on the 8th, so it doesn't give them much time.
Oh, all right. Okay.
So are you thinking that to do a summary of the positions of the individual planning board members?
Yeah.
Okay. So send me your positions.
That's fair to me.
I just wanna
Is the
say-
rest of the board okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I just want to say I'm not in agreement that we should be negotiating because I think our remit is just on that parcel. So on the parcel, I think that the town owns the parcel. I think the part about whether we want to, the reasons for why you voted to withdraw and whether there's negotiation, that actually isn't really before us. What's before us is whether or not we would waive that parcel. And I guess what we can convey is we didn't get to vote on that because the applicant withdrew. But the reasons that for the votes of whether there's hope that we can negotiate or something like that, I don't share that sentiment. I look at it very black and white. I think the parcel belongs to the town, and that's.
So that's your position. I mean, that's a perfect thing to put in your email to Mimi.
I mean, would it be easy enough to just say that the applicant withdrew based on feedback from the board? I mean,
You said it right out loud.
I mean, is that enough? Or
Well,
do we
Lisa,
still
the
need
thing,
to-
the thing that I don't think that really captures what's going on here. It's, I'm looking at this as in a very different way than Debbie, and actually I think each of us is looking at it in a unique way. So it's a little bit more complex than that to me.
Well, let me share my concern.
Are we in violation of,
That-
after closing the
that's where
meeting
I
and the
was going.
discussion? Yeah, I don't think
I
we
was
should be
going there.
discussing this personally.
Well, this is the agenda item. It's 120 Turnpike Road.
It's the 40B. It's not the what was in front of us in the public hearing. So we can't really revisit that.
I don't think we are. I think that we're discussing what our communication is going to be with the ZBA on this agenda item.
Well, I think too, Jesse, the public was here, and if we're gonna have a transparent and open conversation, we're now discussing what we may or may not put in a letter after they've gone. So, there we go. We still have some people here, but no, I don't think this falls under the 40B.
Okay. I'll watch it again and I'll try and summarize and I'll work with Karina.
Yes, and just note that because there was a vote on a public hearing, we always prepare a notice of vote, usually quite generic, but we'll give some information in there too, which is.
Okay,
written.
and does that go to ZBA?
We can use that to go to the ZBA
Okay, good.
as an administrative avenue.
Planners report. I'll email you some,
That's a narrative.
yeah. We're early. You can go on and on for hours.
The year-end article disposition, and this is the one we've been carrying over continuously since 2007, or the zoning bylaw revision, Article 18 at the 2008 annual town meeting. There was $7,329 left in that, and we've been rolling it over for an opportunity to use it in the future for a similar application. So I just wanted to get the planning board's okay to do that for this year as well. Okay.
You okay with that, Tessie?
Sorry, I didn't hear. I'm so apologies.
There's money in an article for zoning bylaw revision that we've been rolling over year after year. And Karina just wanted to know if we want to roll it over again.
Yes.
Okay. Marguerite Landry and Mimi and Kelly O'Brien from the building department and I met about the potential of having like a complaint click place on the town website with an avenue so that any complaints that come in, whether it's a tree, a building, drainage or whatever, go through kind of one channel, and then that person kind of manages it and disperses it to the proper department or departments. So just letting you know that it's an online form that is being worked on by this group.
Karina, that's.
Karina,
cool.
I'm sorry. Karina, could you just move the mic a little closer to you?
Oh,
Because
sorry.
it's a little bit hard to hear you. Thank you.
Okay, everybody says that to me.
What's the name of that mailbox? Like, what would it say to somebody?
So many other towns have it. It's a click, a drop down on the homepage of the website. And towns do it in different ways. Some have you know, if you click on DPW, it will go to DPW. If you click on Board of Health, it will go to Board of Health. What Kelly had suggested, because evidently she did this for a hospital, and she like managed all the complaints and made sure they got to where they needed to go and made sure that they were followed up timely and kind of tracked what complaints we had or if they had and how many. And so she believes it should go through like one person is responsible and make sure that things get followed up on. So we were thinking of trying that because she also works full-time for the building department, and give her like 3 months, see how that goes. And if she's inundated, we would go for Plan B.
Would that be some of these letters of complaint that are coming in? Like somebody who's interested to write about, you know, 120 Turnpike, that, use that? No.
No, that would be, a tree, my sidewalk is cracked, somebody's, living in a yurt. Yeah.
Okay.
One of the towns we were referencing was the town of Northborough town. If you go to their town website, up in the top right corner, you'll see a little box. I can't remember what it's called right now, but it was a good example. And when you click on that, it opens up like which department you think it's going to, but it's like a clearinghouse so that it ensures the complaint is received and followed up on. And then if there's non-compliance, it goes to a third level where the zoning enforcement officer writes a letter. Right, there are interim letters like you may be out of compliance, et cetera, and takes it to the third, and then.
Yeah, so there's complaints and then zoning enforcement is also part of this.
The town of Westboro was the regional electric vehicle expo. They were looking for someone from Southborough who wanted to engage with them. A member of the Sustainable Westboro, the town's volunteer environmental committee, and the lead for the annual regional electric vehicle expo that they hold in Westboro every fall. We have representatives, several of the surrounding towns, and would very much like to have someone from Southborough participate. It's a weekend event. It's like a Saturday or a Sunday, and they, there's a picture on it that I sent you. They kind of set up tents, and they have electric vehicles there. It's just like an expo for EVs.
Can we nominate Mr. Stivers, even though he's not on our board?
So I was wondering if I could send this to the select board and other committees to see if they wanted to. No.
Sam, no, Sam.
Sam would be a great choice.
So I'm going to pass it on to the select board and see if they have someone who has the bandwidth to do that. Okay. To select board. Because we're getting spread a little thin. When we have an application for scenic road tree removal, right now, the tree warden designee gets the call, and they have a form that they fill out that takes the information, but it doesn't carry it through to the second step of, if they don't think it's an imminent hazard or a DPW issue, safety issue, it comes back as a regular application to the planning board. Then we promulgate the consolidated public hearing with the select board. So we created a form based on their form that just adds the 2 additional things that are required in the tree policy to kind of trigger that. And we're going to test it out, see if this works. So that the DPW has a way of sending them back to us and we know it's why they're coming back to us.
Is this all on paper or do we have like a electronic way of like even Google Docs? Like how are we,
Yes.
this is all,
Well, no, these are right now.
that you can fill it out online and it goes into an automatic system like a smart sheet or something like that? Do we?
I don't know right now.
Okay.
'cause the,
We do have a form center. I'm sorry, we do have a form center on the new website that sort of has that sort of thing you can create. So we can look into.
Because then you'd create a database. So it's just, instead of all this manual stuff, and their smart sheet subscription is $10 per user per month. I don't know if we can afford it, but I'm just going to say it's really easy and we should probably like think about just the automation because then we'll have a database that's very easy to export. It's called Smartsheet. It's basically online Excel.
So this is a tool that actually funnels through the tree warden designee. So they get a call at the DPW and they have their form and it may be online. We'll find out how exactly, but right now it's similar to, I think the one for the building department is a complaint form for the building department. That's more automated. But this one is very traditional. Right now.
I think that in the conversation that I had with DPW, talking about tree inventory and other things with Mr. Stivers, I thought that we weren't really talking about a form, but I think they, at least the DPW chief understood that some of the stuff's a little antiquated and is open to like some other means, online or permitting process or
Mhm.
something like that to, the idea to kind of also alleviate the staff from having to fill this out. Makes sense that a member of the public would want to just take a picture of their tree, write a little description and upload it. And I didn't really get to talk to him about it in too much detail, but he seemed open to alternate ideas.
Well, and speaking to that, I can say that it started with building permit applications. They're online permitting now. And then ZBA has added to that. And conservation is just starting on that online permitting. Planning is a large animal to do that with, so that takes a lot of preparation because it's Melissa and Lara who are importing the fields for that online permitting, and which they're adjusting right now for the interim building commissioner to add more things so nothing gets missed right now, so that we get more triggers to sign off on things. But all that's in the works. It's just a little slower pace than we would like. Because it's an effort. So we're still working on trying to get our website up to like where we want it. Because when they change the website software, it's a different way of doing it.
Just another thing on trees. At our last meeting, I and Karina and Debbie had asked, we're going to meet with the tree warden designee and the superintendent. We've been unable to score that meeting yet. So he was on vacation. The superintendent was on vacation last week, but
Yeah.
we're still working.
Yeah, and not to make excuses, construction has started. And I know that he's been, because I get emailed questions on other things as well, like, what's going on with, and we're doing this and blah, and mitigating things. But yes, it's been a while. Well, I wanted to keep moving. So, we did get, email from Chris Leroy saying that he was hoping to have, the new the DPW resident request tree application last week. But Arbor Day happened and I think they planted some new trees.
Have a picture.
We got some pictures of those. So there's a lot of stuff happening, but we're on it. We keep pushing for it. And as soon as we, probably by Thursday or so, I'm gonna do another email push. When do you want to have that in?
And more than just the list of trees, we need to, we need to
Yes.
jive on the policy and how we
Yes.
work together on this.
Yeah. That being said, the 2023 Tree City USA was approved, which seems odd, but they always do it like a year behind. So we're already working on the
Yep,
new one.
We've got
right?
one picture for you next
We've
year.
got some. No, we have to send it to the DPW. Oh, hi, oh yeah, we did. Colleen sent it to Chris Leroy. But we should make a bigger announcement, but we'll work on that too. Debbie, I think you had questions about were there other vegetation management plans, and I think Colleen had addressed that with you, that the status of where you are on the pole, and that the dangerous stuff is highest up on the utility poles, and that's the utility company that takes care of a lot of the tree cutting proposals.
But I think, so that's true, but I think that there were other utilities in the town that were,
Nobody else cuts. It's really the electric company.
so the electric company said they used to, well, National Grid
He said he used to, but they don't, for like 10 years.
well, they said they used to have an agreement with the other utilities, and the other utilities no longer were under their agreement, so they're on their own. So we're sure that Verizon and Spectrum or
I'm not sure.
whoever else, Charter, whoever else is
I posed the
cable.
question to my old town manager and he said they did used to do it, but they haven't done it in a very, very long time. It's just National Grid with their vegetation management and then the hazard.
So we'll reach out directly to Verizon we'll find out what other things are on the pole, and we'll make an attempt to reach
Well,
out.
can we ask Chris if other utilities ever, because I would think they would have to go through him to come into town and start chopping trees.
Oh, yes. Yes. All right, we'll ask Chris
Or the-
Leroy if
yeah.
other-
Put it to bed. Yeah.
Utilities, okay.
Just so we can close this loop. You know, maybe it's true, maybe they don't.
Okay.
Maybe they rely on National Grid, but and that's good, but
Okay.
just so we know.
That one up this one. Let me just see the agenda. So I'm in the process of coming up with the 5 or so open space areas for monitoring this year. And I have Lucas Environmental on board, and they have, they understand that part of their scope is to come up with a open space awareness and encroachment policy guideline, in addition to drafting sample letters of each with town council vetting them, that will go out for awareness to people who have open space or abutting it, and then if there are any encroachments. So that's going to be part of this open space report for this year. So I'll be engaging them within the next 2 weeks so that they can get out there, and I've already contacted Freddie Gillespie to participate in that, so she's aware. And I think she's meeting this week so that if they have any suggested areas, otherwise I use my spreadsheet of all the open space areas and just keep going through the list. We revisit some of the ones that are under construction right now so that we make sure during construction we can catch anything. But, let's see here. Chapter 61, the North Row Road parcels. Jesse might have an update on that. I know that you did a small brief to someone who just asked.
I do not.
You do not? Okay.
I think
From
Lisa does.
Shopsky?
So the select board had it on their last agenda. There was a healthy discussion about it. I don't think the select board at this point is in support of moving forward to exercise the right of first refusal, but they did agree to wait until closer to the date. They heard from Open Space. I believe Shopsy had sent a note, spoke. So at this point, and again, Mimi, CPC, thank you. You know, was in support of exploring it. So their big question was, how's it going to be funded? There were still questions. We don't know if the clock is ticking or not, but they're treating it as if the clock is still ticking. So I think May 28th was the date that they have to get final feedback from the public on. So that's really, Mimi, did I miss anything? They just seemed more in support of like a 1 unit here, 1 unit there versus looking on a much broader scale of
Or 40B.
or 40B. Yeah. So again, I will just say that I still think this is an incredible opportunity for meaningful, not 80% AMI affordable housing. And, you know, our teachers, our firefighters don't qualify under an 80% right now, which is just a shame. So I'll leave it at that.
Kristen LaVault, 12 Southwood Drive, 3rd time's a charm. I just want to point out, I wasn't able to attend last week's meeting. I did watch it today, and I just want to get on record and ask the public, and we will be putting it out there, that it's really important everybody watches that meeting. Incredibly educational on multiple topics that we're covering right now. And I do believe if Freddie wasn't there, or if Lisa wasn't there, that this is another case where the select board would have made a decision on behalf of the entire community on a very important parcel of land. I don't know how I feel about it, to be honest with you, but we haven't had the chance to explore it. And so for them to be making comments that we don't need anymore, open space, very hot, which is a comment that was made on behalf of our town. I think some of these decisions are being made that should be made with the public. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I've reached out to CAI Technologies, who updates our GIS mapping for the ARPA funds that we have in order to update the zoning layers into the GIS mapping, the downtown district into the GIS mapping, toggling the zoning layers, perhaps adding in the wetland buffers and the no disturb zone, and correct errors in the open space areas that are shown. Some places it's not shown properly. So I've been trying to keep an inventory of that. So that's in the works as well, because we have to get contracts underway prior to the June 30th, even though the money can still be allocated, like can be used later into the year.
Just, I think, I don't know if anyone saw, I think they updated our GIS again, and there's a mass historical, button.
Yay.
So if you click that, that whole station area all.
Lights up.
And that's what I have, but we do have one set of minutes.
Can I ask a quick question? Who's doing our minutes? Are you guys doing the minutes now? Bridget's still doing the minutes. So I do want to just say one thing, is the technology, like there are companies like Fathom and Fireflies that we invite onto Zoom and they literally take the minutes. So I do transcriptions with it now. It's, again, it's like $100 a year for premium subscription for one account. And I think it's highly recommended for us because it's a really good way to get minutes immediately for the instance, like what we're trying to do with getting some comment back
What are
versus
they called again?
there's two companies, Fathom.com and Fireflies are both very good, well-vetted AI tools that will listen, they'll summarize the minutes, and then they'll give you the actual transcription
Thank you
by
very much, 'cause
speaker.
I've been actually looking at that this week. So last week, I delved in, I got a hold of a couple of them, and I talked to Jason. He wants to look at it, obviously, before he puts it in the system, so. But yes, thank you for,
All right.
I was looking to.
Perfect timing. Okay, thank you very much.
So Marty, let me ask you, so that subscription, would it be $100 per board or for the town?
So it's a town, it's a town Zoom, right? So I think if you just start the Zoom, it depends how many accounts. Like if you have 4, you could probably get, like for $400 a year, you could probably get like 5 to 10 seats.
I'm just thinking with all the boards and
Versus
committees.
this cost of minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, the boards and committees that are taking their own minutes
Oh, yeah.
now would now have the ability for very short money for the town to be able to focus on their meeting and not the minutes.
Totally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's huge.
Technology is amazing.
I know. Yeah, and, yeah, Leah found one that does it after the fact. So she had her recordings and then she would get the minutes. Yeah, so.
That's super. Thank you.
Don't you wish you had that in your 15 years on open space?
Mimi, I have a quick question.
Yep.
Why are we meeting on Monday, the 6th?
Yeah, it was the way the calendar worked because we had in April, there was Patriots Day, then there was the first night of Passover. So we've been 3 weeks
It was a 3-week stretch.
stretch between, so there was a big gap between our last meeting on April 1st and today.
Right. But what's on that agenda? In other words, what can't be moved to the 20th?
Right now, it would be the 241, 245 Turnpike Road because, let me just see, maybe,
The car
I think it's-
condos?
I think it's 6/5 that they need an extension.
right, so they would still have May 20th in order to get their site plan, major site plan extension because they don't expire until June 5th.
So the only thing is MBTA, I don't know if we want to get working on that sooner.
I mean, if the rest of the board wants to meet, that's fine, but
We don't have
It
any new
seems-
applications.
superfluous to me.
Do we want to do a work session via Zoom or still meet in person?
If we have no public hearings, I don't see why we couldn't do that.
Yeah, all we have is the discussion for 241, 245.
And that will probably be relevant.
Actually, could we schedule that? We had talked about getting feedback from Southville on the mixed use. Could we put the word out that we talked about doing a forum or something? Could we not use that opportunity and just do it for strictly MBTA and mixed use, and we can get the word out to the public that what we talked about tonight, you know, being able to do something. Does that make sense?
We can, yeah, but I think we need to extend that site plan for the car condos. I mean, that's not, I don't think that's a heavy lift. So how do we get the word out? Who's the
Well,
Facebook?
Kristen has shown us the power of social media. So I think between that and we do a news flash.
Okay,
And, you know, we'll just ask groups. I mean, I'd be happy to send out some stuff or do whatever.
And didn't we take all those emails at all the forums? Where are those? Oh, so we have a distribution list?
Yeah, I mean, there's not all the emails, but I have the list of everybody that's there. A lot of them didn't give the email.
Okay, so I think we should just create a distribution list and just do it that way too, because a lot of people
Yeah.
wanted, signed up for that.
Also, they created their own private Facebook group, the Southville did, so we can put the word out through there as well. Yeah, but we'll just let, you know, we can put something out through, you know, the town, put it on Newsflash, the blog can put something out, we'll use the Sobo, Kristen, you know, again, I just think it would be a great opportunity to, you know,
so this will be via Zoom.
it can be via Zoom, sure.
Are you okay with that, Jesse?
Yes.
I'm not convinced.
Oh, sure I am. So I make the motion to approve the planning board minutes from April 1st, 2024 as written.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes?
Miria, yes.
Brascio, yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Brascio, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Night.
Night.
Thank you.
You have to start the recording.